Greetings, APUSH scholars, for our review on Unit 4, which covers the War of 1812, the Monroe Doctrine, the Missouri Compromise, growth of industry and the market revolution, era of good feelings, and some Supreme Court cases. First of all, looking at the review sheet from top to bottom, the War of 1812, you should be aware of some attempts by Jefferson to avoid this war, the 1807 Embargo Act and the 1807 Non-Intercourse Act. The first was a ban on all trade from between us and all nations of the world, especially Europe. This is our ships. Other ships could come and trade with us, but our ships were banned from trading abroad, and then that's limited just to England and France, which are the two countries at war, which are grabbing our ships because we're trading with both sides. Some reasons for the war: the impressment of American sailors, the seizure of our ships, the seizure of our cargo, and the arming of Indians, at least the accusation that the English are arming Indians who are marauding on the frontier. Some reasons for Federalist opposition. Remember, the Federalists, basically the Northeast seaboard states, vote against the declaration of war. This is not a popular war in the Northeast. Loss of trade is the big one here, economic depression for New England because of the embargo and then later because of the war, and then fear of reprisal along the exposed coastal cities to a superior British Navy. The Battle of New Orleans is the sort of the end point of the war. It's actually 2 weeks after the treaty is signed, but it's perceived by Americans to be a victory which will cause the Brits to sue for peace, although that peace treaty again is signed in Ghent, Belgium, 2 weeks before this battle. The Battle of New Orleans is a smear. It's a clobbering of a veteran British army which has just defeated Napoleon, and the hero that comes out of this battle is Andrew Jackson, who's got this motley ragtag army of U.S. troops and Tennessee volunteers and local militia and black soldiers, and some of John Lafitte's pirates they're all fighting with Jackson here, repelling this invasion coming from Jamaica. The Treaty of Ghent is the treaty that ends the war in 1815 and ends the war with what's called the status quo antebellum. We just go back to the way things were before the war. These problems, such as impressment, are not addressed, but remember, Napoleon now is imprisoned on St. Helena in the South Atlantic. The French Empire is no more, and there's no reason to impress. Not impress, but yeah, to impress, to kidnap American soldiers. The irony of the Republican and Federalist positions during the war is the Republicans, who are a small government states' rights party during the war, are, well, first of all, they declare war. They do this embargo earlier under Jefferson, which is not in the Constitution if you're following strict construction. And they do ask for conscription, which is turned down, they meaning Madison. So it's sort of a big government thing to exercise war and to embargo. And the Federalists, who now are the minority, who were in favor of a strong government and subservient states, now the states in the Northeast are going to get together at Hartford for this convention, where they're going to discuss secession. And it's essentially, they're going to take a states' rights position. There's going to be these proposed amendments that it takes 2/3 of the states to allow a new state into the Union. They're tired of all these new states. Every one of them is Republican. They want 2/3 of the states to approve war, not 2/3, not a majority of both sides of Congress. And they want an amendment to the Constitution, no embargoes allowed, and they want one term for president. And these are all positions which are at odds with this idea of a loose construction of the Constitution. Battle of Tippecanoe, this is right before the war breaks out, or at least the declaration of war. In 1811, Tecumseh is defeated in Indiana by a man who becomes a later president, a General William Henry Harrison. And Tecumseh's got this confederacy that goes all the way from Wisconsin down to the Gulf of Mexico, and he is organizing Indians in this alliance to attack American settlers along the frontier. He's got this brother who's called the Prophet, and this idea is if you reject the white man's ways, Indians will win and the white settlers will be pushed back. The Missouri Compromise, the first state entirely on the other side of the Mississippi River is that wants statehood, is Missouri in 1820. But the problem here is this will upset the balance in the Senate, which is 50-50 states with slavery and 50-50 non-slave states. And the compromise here that's hammered out under Henry Clay, later called the Great Compromiser, is Missouri comes in as a slave state, Maine is a free state. And 3630, the southern line of Missouri, below it slavery, above it no slavery, until the line hits the end of the Louisiana Purchase. You should be familiar with what's called the Talmadge Amendment. This is a failed amendment to the Missouri Enabling Act, which creates Missouri as a state. And this amendment would have banned slavery in Missouri and freed all slaves at age 25. But this shows that there are some problems. There's some sectionalism under what's called the era of good feelings. Remember, the era of good feelings is in 1820 when Monroe wins. He wins all the electoral votes except for one, and there's this perception that we have won the War of 1812, and the country is peaceful, it's prospering, there's economic growth, there's growth of industry, immigrants are coming over, democracy is healthy, and there's this confidence. But underneath are these sectional issues of slavery, the tariff, which is guarding northern factories, and the Bank of the United States, which is kind of symbolic of the us versus them, the many people who are the working, honest farmers versus those bankers, those who knows what they do, investors and businessmen and merchants along the eastern seaboard. The president during the era of good feelings is Monroe. The president during the War of 1812 is Madison. Some Supreme Court cases to know. Gibbons versus Ogden. Supreme Court says only Congress can control and limit interstate trade between states. Dartmouth versus Woodward says that a state can't unilaterally break a contract which it has entered into with a private party. And the Charles River Bridge case, this says that it's okay to build a free bridge that ends the toll monopoly of a previously favored bridge. This is in Boston. The Charles River Bridge had this monopoly, and they alone could charge tolls. But another bridge is built, and that's the Warren Bridge. And the Charles River Bridge monopoly will be broken for the common good here. So these cases basically show the supremacy of the federal government over the states and a pro-business attitude by the Federalist Court. Developments in industry, you have the growth of textile mills. Think of Sam Slater introducing the first textile mill in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. You have the cotton gin invented by Eli Whitney and interchangeable parts. And the cotton gin, remember, is going to help propel slavery farther west as there's this insatiable demand for cotton, which becomes cheap and very desirable by consumers. For transportation, you have the growth of canals, and most famously the Erie Canal connecting the Hudson River with the Great Lakes, so the Midwest now can ship their stuff to the East Coast down through the canal down the Hudson River. And this is the most famous of the canals, but there's hundreds of canals built all over in the East and in the Midwest, connecting various river systems with each other. And then one other thought here, one of the more famous factory worker systems here is at the Waltham Mills, controlled by Mr. Lowell. He's going to have a difficulty finding labor, and he's going to be hiring farm girls. And farm girls are eager to get off the farm. They live in kind of a dormitory condition. They have some extra money with the wages that they're paid. And this is seen as an improvement over the boring nature of farm work. The Lowell farm girls working in the mills, kind of docile, kind of compliant, and of course working for low wages. The new immigration in the 1800s, it's still primarily people from the British Isles or from Great Britain, but this is also going to include now the Irish because of the potato famine, and you have tremendous numbers of Germans coming over. And Germans are coming over because of basically military conflict and wars and these rebellions that are taking place in post-Napoleonic Germany, or the German states. Religious tensions, you have virtually all of these Irish are Catholic, and a lot of the Germans are. And keep in mind, this is a predominantly Protestant country which is looking with suspicion at these Catholics. And also, the Irish are coming over destitute. They're undercutting wages, slums are growing in eastern cities, and crime is picking up in these slums. Henry Clay's American system. This is the second of his big compromises. And the American system is a vision for economic interdependence. And part of this will be the North is going to maintain a high tariff to protect its factories and a bank for investment. And what's the South and the West? What are they going to get? The South is going to get money from the federal government for internal improvements, things like roads and canals. And the West is also going to get money for internal improvement. And also they're going to be promised cheap land prices. So the goal here is, and keep in mind Henry Clay is from sort of smack dab in the middle of the country, Kentucky, and he's got his eye on the presidency, and he's looking for a balance here where everybody has to give up maybe a little bit, everybody gets something. A few treaties here to round out our review sheet. The Rush-Bagot Treaty is going to demilitarize the Great Lakes after the War of 1812. The Convention of 1818, also called the Treaty of 1818, is going to set the border at Canada at 49 degrees parallel, and it's going to arrange for a joint occupation of the Oregon Territory, and this will be just sort of put on the back burner for future resolution. The Transcontinental Treaty, also called the Adams-Onis Treaty, in 1819 is going to get the U.S. Florida. We will agree to pay $5 million, but not to Spain, but to claimants against Spain for Indian attacks or for runaway slaves. This also sets this line of division. Well, when we get to the far west, it'll be at 42 degrees, quite a bit below 49 degrees. This is considered at the time to be a very favorable border between American-occupied Oregon and what would be Spanish California. And later, to the regret of many, this treaty will basically concede that Texas is owned by Mexico, and Texas will be that land that is west of the Sabine River, which makes the border of Louisiana. Some thoughts here on this unit, so study up. Good luck, gang. Signing out.